Welcome back to another Prospects Live Team Analysis Breakdown. I'm your host, Eddie Amager. I am joined by Ralph Lifshitz. And before we get into the Cincinnati Reds, want to remind you guys that on June 10th, the day one of the MLB draft, Prospects Live will be doing a concurrent YouTube stream where we will react to all the picks as they happen in person, all the surprises, all the anguish, all the love that we see in this draft. Maybe I'm thinking about something else here, but joined by a bunch of Prospects Live staff members that you've seen on the draft, the experts, and external rotating cast, also guys from the industry that you've seen work with us. So get excited. We'll see you there. Ralph, let's jump into the Cincinnati Reds. They draft 12th. This is a team that has a pretty solid top 5 or 7 in their farm system, lacking some pitching outside of Lodolo and Hunter Green. So just a lot of direction they can go here. On the card, we see replenish a weak farm system. What does that mean if you're the Cincinnati Reds? How do you do that from the number 12 slot and throughout the draft?
Yeah, so the Reds are an interesting organization because there's been some shakeups, not necessarily so much at the top, but really sort of within the structure of the organization. We know they hired Kyle Boddy from Driveline, brought in a lot of folks from that organization. They've become much more analytically inclined. Brad Meador, who is their their director of amateur scouting, took over the draft and sort of leading the charge there last year. And I think, there's not a lot of patterns you can take away necessarily from one season. It's a short sample size, but I see them targeting a lot of high upside guys here. If you go through their draft at 7 last year, they took Nick Lodolo. Then at 49, they took Rhys Hines, who's a guy with real big hit tool questions, but obviously oozes with tools and raw power. Really exciting guy from, down near you in IMG Academy. But even Tyler Callahan, another Florida kid with a big bat, some questions around the position. Ivan Johnson, who was a JUCO guy out of Chipola, who was awesome, really, really exciting middle infield prospect. So right at the top of the draft, they did that. They even snuck another one, favorite of mine from the Cape back in 2018, Quinn Cotton, who was a really exciting outfielder out of GCU, Grand Canyon University. So when I look at this draft board, I see even into the later rounds with guys like Jan Contreras, they target upside. They go after, tools. If a guy has one loud tool like a Rhys Hines, they're not scared to investing in that and potentially seeing what their player development guys can do. And now that they've even revamped that, or let's say supercharged that more than what they already had, we knew at the major league level they had Derek Johnson, some of the best pitching coaches in the game. They have an organizational wide, really strong coaching staff, and it's a strength for them. And I think they're going to follow that in the draft with some of the arms they take or potential bats. I mean, they can go upside and could be real interesting at 12.
I mean, you say bats, and I already get stars in my eyes of a really upside bat in Great American Ballpark. What would that look like if they did take an upside bat and they have such a strong developmental staff to maybe maximize that? What are some names that Cincinnati Reds fans can maybe start looking deeper at?
Yeah, well, I think potentially there's a few of these left-handed hitting outfielders, prep outfielders are in play for them. The top 4 there. I don't think Veen drops to 12, but Austin Hendrick, who might be the highest upside bat in terms of that prep class of those left-handed guys with Pete Crow Armstrong, Hassel, and Veen. It's him and Veen. I think that Hendrick might even have more power. He's really exciting. And there's some hit tool questions, but that's not something they've strayed away from, at least in 2019, when we look at that draft board with guys like, maybe Callahan, but certainly Rhys Hines. And Hendrick's hit tool is much better than Rhys Hines, a lot of folks that are very smart that have seen Hendricks play for years think he could potentially be, one of the highest end bats in the entire class. Big raw power from the left side, ability to play, right field potentially long term. In Great American Ballpark, that could really play. Now, where they drafted 12, Tyler Soderstrom could be in play. I know he's a catcher, but he's not really. He's probably going to end up at third base or maybe even in the outfield. Hassel, if he gets past the Padres and the Rockies and some of those teams, Robert Hassel could be in play there. And then certainly a guy like Pete Crow Armstrong as well, if they are on him. I think those guys are all potentially in play. But at the same time, because of who's in that organization and, the way they've built around pitching and targeted it, it wouldn't shock me if they scoop up whoever might be there. Could be a guy like Nick Bitsko might be interesting because of some of the characteristics on his fastball and his cutter. And, they might find him to be really interesting analytically and feel as though they can, do some things to take off. The problem is, I know that they don't have a lot of high and right-handed starters in the minors, but they do have a decent amount of sort of mid-tier depth with guys like Tony Santillan and Vladimir Gutierrez and even Hunter Green, who's a little bit more high-end. But they have some right-handed arms, maybe a few more lefties, and they certainly could add a few more bats. They've traded away a lot of players over the last few years between guys like Jeter Downs and Josiah Gray, et cetera, et cetera. There's been more than a few.
Last question here, Ralph. If you had to make one pick that would be the best fit for this organization, we talked about Austin Hendrick and the upside he possesses. You mentioned that the Reds do have a hell of a developmental system in place for pitchers. Though, what's the name you think that's going to marry the best with this organization?
Yeah, I would love to actually see it be Garrett Crochet. He's such an interesting arm. There's so much upside there. I think he's a better athlete than I think people even realize. Everyone kind of knocks the mechanics, but I don't hate him. I feel like he's funky in a way that adds deception onto him. His fastball slider combination are just so good, so unique. I feel like if he ended under the tutelage, was under the tutelage of guys like Johnson and Bodie and all these training programs, the things that the Reds have invested in heavily, I feel like they might be an organization that might be able to maximize him as a potential starting pitcher and get him to the show as a starter, maybe get that third pitch up to a certain point, figure out things physically to keep him healthy, make sure the kinetic change move and all the stuff that they really do a good job of at Driveline and just within the Reds organization as well. For me, I'd love to see Crochet end up a place like that. Bitsko would be fun. And a lot of the bats. I mean, really, the fun thing about the Reds right now is looking a year ahead, or excuse me, from where we were, a year ago. They're a really exciting organization. You almost want players to end up there, or I didn't feel that way a year or 2 years ago, especially,
Very good, man. It's just the same feeling you get when someone lands with the Dodgers, the Yankees, or the Indians.
Maybe.
Yeah, the Reds are in that conversation now.
Sure.
Appreciate you, Ralph. That's the Cincinnati Reds team analysis breakdown. Remember, June 10th, the Prospects Live MLB concurrent draft stream will be going on. We will see you then. Circle your calendars. Have a good day.